Well, thank you, Zed. I'm very happy to be here and to be here with Rudy. How you doing, Rudy?
I'm happy to be here, feeling excitement of being alive.
I love it. I love it. So, Rudy, we met a few weeks ago and we had a conversation about the wounded healer, and it was a very good conversation. I thought so. I don't know about you.
It was a powerful experience for me, and I enjoyed being on your podcast and sharing that with folks and getting to hear us conversing that way.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure. I've always learned from you. Always learn from you for sure. So let's kind of share with the audience, what is a wounded healer to you? You are one, so what does that mean to you?
Well, first of all, to me, being a healer is someone who has offered himself, herself up to spirit to be a conduit for spirit to do work in the world, for spirit to be made manifest, uh, to facilitate the process of healing, to be a spiritual companion to another as they walk their path. And to be a wounded healer is to be someone who has experienced and hopefully learned from, lived with, having sustained a wound himself, herself, and understood it to be an integral part of the healing process for myself as well as for the people that I work and play and walk alongside.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I mean, we have to be with that process within ourselves. And I have found that as I help others, they're helping me. As I help ask the right question or propose an idea or a concept for someone, usually what emerges from that conversation is something that can actually help me as well. It's something being reflected back as me, ask me for me.
Right.
And I don't know, I'm sure you've experienced that.
Yes, and I reflect, go back to Henry Nouwen, who was the psychologist and Catholic priest who came up with the term wounded healer, at least in our contemporary understanding of that. And he was a Catholic priest who was having increasing difficulties as he studied more and more about psychology and spirituality. He had difficulty reconciling his place in the hierarchy of the Catholic Church with what he knew about becoming and being, until he came to peace with his own woundedness as a priest and the things that had driven him to want to be a minister, a healer, but from an unhealed place in himself. And as he embraced that and faced it, he found himself not only more able to be with others, but able to bear the dynamic tension of being a priest in a hierarchical system that he didn't necessarily agree with all the time. And that his woundedness helped him be more present to himself and thereby more present to others, because that ultimately, I think that is what the wound asks us, is to be here in this imperfect human body and be open to the divine, the sacred, the infinite.
Yeah.
And hold that dynamic tension.
So true. In our conversation last time, you said something that was really impactful and it stood out to both of us, particularly you. You mentioned that 2-year-old that was within you, who was still there, driving your life, when you compared it to when you cut a tree and you look at the rings of the tree, that core is always going to be there. So can you talk a little bit about that, like that 2-year-old and how that still or was there or still it will be there?
Well, in my case, my 2-year-old had parents who were busy. They were busy immigrating from Indonesia to Holland, and from Holland they were preparing to immigrate to the United States. They were dealing with financial struggles. They were dealing with the leftover woundedness from living through World War II and the occupation of Indonesia, all of that.
Wow.
So they were too busy for the 2-year-old to get what he wanted from mommy and daddy, that physical contact, that love me.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was that part of me that always held that as being my fault, that I wasn't enough, that if I just be more shiny, if I just be better, if I behave better, if I did things better, and then I would get the love from my parents, and by extension, the love from the people around me as I grew older. And there was a part of me that, in years of spiritual growth and therapy and dealing with the inner process, there's a part of me that wanted to heal that 2-year-old, to make him better. And what I've come to understand in recent years, especially in the last couple of years that I'm dealing with the particular woundedness in my life, that 2-year-old will never be healed. He will always be exactly the way he was. Trying to fix him is a fool's errand. Because a 2-year-old is like the ring, like you mentioned, is like the 2-year-old ring on a tree surrounded by the 3-year-old's ring, the 4-year-old, the 5-year-old, the 100-year-old.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah,
it will always be there. Now, and if the tree suffered woundedness at 2 years, then in the 3rd year, it built scar tissue around
that too.
But and at some level, that's what you and I and most of us do. It's also been likened to being multiple passengers in a car. There's still a 2-year-old in the car with me in the back seat saying, "Love me, love me, love me." And there's a 5-year-old, and there's an 18-year-old, and there's a 27-year-old, and there's a 68-year-old, hopefully being the one in the driver's seat, not the 2-year-old in the back seat. Not the 6-year-old trying to show off for the first time for his first grade teacher.
What a visual.
Not the 18-year-old trying to attract the girlfriend, but the 68-year-old who can include all of those in the car and still be the one driving and focused on traffic right now. Even if the 2-year-old screaming in the backseat, as 2-year-olds will do.
Right. You know, a similar metaphor would be, I've used this with my clients, is the operating system of our iPhones. You know, iPhone should be on iOS 12 or something like that, right? Or 13. I don't know which one it is, but it gets upgraded every year almost. Right. And I should be at Angel 40.0 today, ideally. But in what areas of my life am I operating from Angel 2.0, 8.0, 18.0, you know? And those are the things that we have to, in a way, like you said, upgrade and be, in your case, that 60-year-old that's driving the car, not the 2-year-old, not the 18-year-old, not the 8-year-old, you know? So it's a very similar concept.
And it's important to recognize that 2-year-old there and give him his due, her due, when she screams out, as she will from time to time. And the 16-year-old and the 30-year-old. But the 60-year-old needs to be at the wheel.
Correct.
And needs to be conscious because traffic's coming.
It's like so many things going on.
Yeah, especially now. Especially now, 2020.
So you mentioned something about 2 years ago. As of 2 years ago, the woundedness that was still coming out. And the title of this presentation is Being at Peace with What Was, What Is, and What Could Be. So let's talk a little bit about what was for you. What does that mean to you in terms of who you are?
Well, until I was 65, I had a golden life. I had done everything I wanted to do. I had this wonderful music career. I'd been working with the Celebration Circle for 25 years at that point. I traveled all over the country singing and speaking. I'd raised this amazing son and have a wonderful daughter, a great wife, a loving home. Yay, me! And then suddenly one day I had a car wreck and it almost killed my wife, Zette. And
I remember.
It hurt my knee a lot. And it for the first time in our lives, we were in the doctor's office every other week for something. And it wasn't just a knee. Suddenly my back hurt and my hearing was going out and I had sleep apnea. And blah, blah, blah. Suddenly I was 65 and hurting and wondering, what am I doing with my life? I had a sort of a near-death experience in the process of getting hit 80 miles an hour T-bone.
Well, I believe Zette was pronounced.
They were worried she was
right.
She left in the helicopter unconscious for the ride, and So when we survived that, there was a question: well, what now? What are we here to do? We've done the circle for 25 years.
What a moment!
In the process of dealing with the anxiety of that and the healing and the physical pain that lived with us for a while, I started smoking more pot and deal with the pain, deal with the anxiety. And I didn't become aware of that until one day I acted out inappropriately with a woman that I knew that was part of the circle family. And in the process of that, I had to face up to my addictions, uh, to smoking, but more than that, in the process of recovering from that woundedness and from stepping down from the circle, I had to come to a place of facing that 2-year-old in me that for 60 plus years had been screaming for attention, and to come to peace with the fact that I had built a life and a lifestyle, a profession around getting attention for being me, singing pretty songs, saying wise words, serving spirit, all with 100% good intention, but without being aware of the shadow that was driving me forward. I was wanting to serve the light, be of help to God and to my fellow people from a sincere place, but it was driven by a 2-year-old.
You're being pushed.
Right. By, I need more attention. Love me now. Hold me. And I had to come to peace with the fact that at some level I'm a love addict, needing more love than I get. I am in the middle of a 12-step recovery process. I'm working the program. I have been for a year and a half.
Awesome.
And coming to peace with what was, which was a hungry, needy 2-year-old driving a 65-year-old, 66-year-old, 7-year-old's life. Coming to peace with the aspirations of the golden boy who graduated from college on scholarship and was going off to get a recording contract and then serving God, that one who wanted to be over there where things were brighter and shinier and more successful. All of that which was still riding in the car and driving all too often. That's what was. And coming to peace with what was has been the greatest gift of my life. As much as it hurt me personally, as much as it hurt my family, and much as it hurt the circle community when I had to step down from a place of shame and sadness over my unethical behavior. I now see it was a real gift. It was the only way Spirit knew how to make me pay attention to the shadow that had been driving the vehicle. And it tried through the car wreck. Getting hit at 80 miles an hour wasn't enough to make me come to peace. Oh, let me just up the ante here a little bit. And so my soul coming out sideways and being driven by shadow to act out unethically was what it took for me to be shocked to my core and come down to my knees and ask Spirit for help in healing this rift with my shadow.
All right.
That's what was.
You know, there's something to be said about, wow.
Sorry. Let me just breathe into that for a second.
Definitely.
I say it glibly, but there's
painful road.
It's a lot.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. And I have to stop in this moment and just give thanks to Spirit and to my amazing partner, Zed, and to the many friends, yourself included, who said, we're here with you. Keep walking your walk best you can.
Yep.
We're here with you. And I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for you. Grateful for the circle community and friends and Zed. And this opportunity to come fresh into what is.
Because that's part of the thing. Like, when that moment came, and there is a thing that happens to people like you, to people like me, you get put on this pedestal, and when you put people on pedestals, there is no room for their humanness. There's absolutely zero room for that person to be human, to make mistakes, to err, and the moment you do, you get crucified. And part of the reason why I started the podcast and I started that conversation is because I wanted to create awareness that you're not on this path and I'm not on this path because we're masters of it. You know, we're on this path because we're trying to figure it out. We're willing to go and figure it out. We're willing to step out there and feel the pain and feel the shadow and feel the light, like feel the whole spectrum of it all, but not because we're masters of it, because we're in it right along with you. And I think that's the biggest difference. And I would say, if I could encourage anyone, is not to put anybody on a pedestal, because we're all human beings and we're spiritual beings. There is a duality, but our spirituality is trying to help us be better human beings, not stop being human beings.
Right.
You know, and I think that's something that through people's own woundedness, because again, people are going to look at your story through the lenses of their own woundedness. So if you bring up woundedness in me that I've been avoiding for years and years and years and years, I'm avoiding it for a reason. I don't want to look at that.
Right.
And you're bringing it up. So let me get after you. You know, you need to pay the price because you're the one bringing it up. I don't want to deal with this. So I think there was also part of that in the what was and leading into what is. So what is? How do you make peace with what is now? You know?
Well, I think we're all dealing with that question, particularly in COVID times. There's a woundedness inside of me as a person. There's a wounded inside of us as a society.
Yeah, a collective society.
A collective society paying the consequences for how we've treated the environment and how we've gotten out of balance with the earth and with our body, mind, spirit. And as we sit here socially distanced having this conversation outside, to take all those precautions, that's what we're all being asked to do, is to become increasingly aware of our relationship with each other. And that's certainly what the case is for me at what is, where I am now in my path of healing, both as a person, in my family unit, in my celebration circle community, is try to be increasingly aware of my relationship and to remember that as much as I like thinking just about me and making me the most important person, at any given moment, I'm in a co-creative relationship with whoever I'm in contact with,
right.
Whether it's my wife of 40 years or you as my friend or a person who's coming to the circle for the very first time. We're in a co-creative dance and I need to be respectful of and careful with that relationship. That's what is. And I think we as a culture, we as a spiritual community called Celebration Circle, and I as a human am asked to be aware of how powerful my actions are at every moment of every day.
So
to be aware of the power of my thoughts and my actions and take responsibility for it.
And so with that, how do you make peace with what could be? Because I mean, your what was and what is are going to impact what's coming. So
yes. So for one thing, as a wounded healer, I take some comfort in the Japanese concept of kintsugi, which is comes from the awareness that if a precious ceramic object is broken, you take it to a kintsugi specialist, someone who specializes in using a gold epoxy blend to fix the bowl in such a way that it's even more beautiful than it was before it was broken. To glue it back together, not in a way to hide the cracks, but to emphasize the cracks with gold, with precious metal that shows itself in how the kintsugi master puts the bowl back together. And in that way, as a person who has been wounded, who is healing from that woundedness through the recovery process, I am tasked with wearing my wound with gold. Not as a source of pride, look at me, I survived, but as a person who says, I'm here in my woundedness.
I've lived through some shit.
I've lived through some stuff, and I'm here, exactly. I wear my wounds. I'm not here to hide or pretend I'm not there. so that I can be with you and your wounds, your sorrows, your joys, and your confusion, which all of us are facing,
Yep.
particularly in the COVID times. How do we move into tomorrow? Well, we move in tomorrow with our woundedness openly displayed, or at least not hidden away, not pretending it's there, with faith that we can co-create together in relationship, but also with spirit, constantly co-create a future in which we are more sustainable, more equitable, more just, more able to be in a relationship that fosters the highest good for us all, not just for me,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm the more important, but for us, for all of us. I believe it's possible.
Yeah.
I have to believe it's possible. Which is why I'm excited to be present in this moment, talking to you
Mm-hmm.
about the possibility of a tomorrow that has room for more than we can currently imagine.
I love that. You know, I had a call with a past client that wanted to check in with me. She's been seeing what I'm up to on social media, and it caught her attention. And she said, you know, I think you've been through something. Just the way you're coming across. You must have gone through something, and I got really curious. What lesson is he getting out of whatever he just went through? You know, so she called just to check in and see where I was at. And my point with that is, you just said something. I've lived through some stuff. And if I'm going to go to a mentor, if I'm going to go through a coach or a spiritual guide, I want them to have gone through some stuff. Because otherwise, where are you going to draw wisdom from? What could you possibly teach me? If your life is perfect and nothing's happened to you, I mean, what could you possibly help me with?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think that's the value of what wounded healers bring to the world. Hey, I've been through some stuff. Here's my experience. If you choose to accept my guidance, I hope it resonates with you. I hope it helps you. I hope we can co-create a relationship here. But I've been through some stuff, and here's what I got to say. You know? And so I think that's the value of what you bring to the table, what I bring to the table. You know, I still got 20 years to go to where you're at. but nonetheless,
Yeah.
You know, I think that's the value of it, you know?
Well, one thing I know is that for 27 years, I enjoyed being the spiritual leader of Celebration Circle. It was good work, I'm proud of it. But I also know it came from that place of the wounded 2-year-old. I also know that at some level it was really tiring to try to be the one in control of things, the spiritual leader.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've learned is I am a spiritual leader.
Mm-hmm.
Even in this time of recovery, people keep coming to me for guys to officiate their wedding, their funeral. There's work to be done. But what I know is I'm no longer the spiritual leader. I am working in co-creation with others, with spirit. And that is more powerful that way.
I agree.
The way I tried to do it before was exhausting. I couldn't sustain it, and I didn't know how to let go of it. So spirit pried it from my hands the only way it knew how, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Or my soul pried it from, who knows?
Who knows?
I could analyze it till the cows come home. What I do know is I've been called to a place of being a co-creator, and still learning that skill. I hope to learn from you and for everybody else I encounter as we move forward as a community, as individuals, toward that oneness that we all know to be the truth.
I agree. I think if anything we can draw from what we're going through and what you've been through, it's to be at peace with what is and not make it be more than what it is. You know, let's just be with what is and see what emerges. I mean, that's really all we can really do.
Yeah.
You know?
And you got to do it by yourself, but you don't have to do it alone.
You don't have to do it alone. I love that. It's so true. We're all in this together.
Yeah.
Like, seriously, I know they say that about the COVID times, but that's much bigger than COVID. Like, we're really in this together. So with that being said, Rudy, thank you so much for taking the time, for not only that, but for the willingness that you stepped out on your own. You stepped down on your own, out of your own. You volunteered yourself, and you dove deep into the shadow work. You're doing your work. You're doing your recovery. You're still doing it, and you're looking for a better tomorrow. You know? So thank you so much for doing that and for sharing that with us.
My pleasure.
Appreciate you.